Thank you all for joining us, and I call the meeting to order, and if we can stand to do the Pledge of Allegiance and the words of inspiration. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God, we ask blessings on the people who have been called to lead the community in which we live and work and pray. Keep in mind, because we all forget from time to time that we're not only leaders, but we're also servants, and it is our responsibility to serve the common good of all. Grant us the wisdom and the courage to know and do what is right and good and true. May we speak out when it is time to speak out, listen patiently and receptively when it is time to listen. May we always be guided by the spirit of community, by the spirit of justice, and the spirit of love. This we strive for in the name of all that we hold sacred and holy, all that we hold good and right and true. Amen.
Amen. Praise God. You are?
Okay, next, if we can do roll call.
Bolin,
Here.
Dwyer,
Here.
Hanson Maynard,
Here.
Irwin,
Here.
Marucci,
Here.
Nazary, O'Neill, here, Parker, Solinski.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. And next on the agenda is public comment for items on the agenda. Okay, and we'll skip right to new business. Tonight, we have more guests joining us for just Q&A, and what we'll ask is you can come up in any particular, not in any particular order, just when you're ready, and introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what experience you have, and if you have any questions or anything that you would like to talk to us about, now's the time.
You should call on people.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Gina, come on up. Hello.
I am Gina Boyd. I am Director of Parks, Recreation, and Senior Services. I went through my portion. Didn't see too much. I mean, because the position now covers seniors, I don't know if we need to include that in the title, or if we want to, and it also refers to me as the park superintendent, which I think is maybe a scooch confusing, just because we call DPW superintendent over there, and we've never referred to me as a superintendent, but that's just me nitpicking. I mean, I've been called worse, so that's totally fine. I'm trying to think what else stood out to me. Our Parks and Rec Board. So we have been looking actively for new members, if anyone would like to join the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. And in here, it says that we meet at least once a month. What I would kind of like to do, although it has not been voted on or discussed or anything official by any means, I was hoping for maybe once a quarter unless we needed to add additional meetings. If we needed additional meetings, we would vote to have another meeting and do it that way. But we have so many monthly meetings for everybody that it's just a lot sometimes. I mean, I'm sure you guys can relate. So, I mean, the little things, like I said, that aren't very bonkers, those were what stood out to me. But if anyone has any questions for me or comments, concerns, I am happy to try to answer them.
Were you in the ordinance section of the?
For the Parks and under the actual Parks and Recreation header part of it.
Okay, what section? Yeah, that's the point.
The 50-1.
50-1?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to be, you're in the ordinance.
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
don't apologize. We're glad to hear your
That's fine.
comments. And the mayor's here. So she-
5-1, 5-0?
50,
At
yeah.
50, she's in the ordinance, not in the.
Am I in the wrong
Gotcha,
spot?
Gotcha.
Yes,
Okay.
but your comments are good comments.
Well, that's good. That means that there's nothing in the charter
No.
that has affected your
That
job.
wasn't, yeah,
So,
absolutely
good.
not. Absolutely not. But I'm happy to, if there's anything that pops up to you guys, I'm happy to address anything if you have any questions.
So I work in the city of East Point, and our Parks and Rec Commission is going, beginning January, went to bi-monthly. We did monthly, and we were finding out, we were there like to approve minutes from the previous meeting, so that is a good catch on your side. And how large, I'm curious, how large is your board?
It was before COVID, it was the Parks and Rec director, which kind of was turning over from Kathy to myself. And then we had just had one person step down because they were moving out of the city. So we had 4 other members on there.
So your board is only 5?
But when I was going through this I actually had never known that before that we were also supposed to be having the city manager at these meetings. So, fun surprise for Nick and or Joe. We have another-
We should ask her both.
Right.
Do you report to Joe?
Yes.
Okay.
From an administrative perspective, the rec directors are becoming intergenerational. And so you're taking on the role of senior citizen coordinator as well. I know when I was here, we had Katie and Mickey, where they were 2 separate, but they worked together.
Yes, and then when Kathy took over, Mickey was here for a bit as a contract employee, and then
Right.
Kathy then became, technically it was recreation and senior services. I do a lot of our park aspect with Trevor and Ryan at DPW, so we pair up on that a lot. I wouldn't consider myself making park decisions on my own about that, but just because the staffing is technically DPW that's doing the majority of that work. So I can make recommendations, but I can't assign.
Well, in a lot of the cities that I've been in, you have the Department of Public Works that takes care of the facilities. It's more facilities maintenance than anything else. And so you're almost like co-directors of recreation.
Yeah, I know in a lot of them, they kind of have their own separate parks, people that are through recreation, but obviously we've never done it that way. We're really not set up to do it that way, but we work together well, so
You know, I think when Mickey set his budgets up, that all the Parks Grounds work was all under Les Tenson or Harry. And they took care of all that so that you, or the rec director, could take care of the intergenerational and the programming and those types of things.
yeah, when we've done it, at least parks budget still comes to me, but the salaries and wages aspect of the park employees that are under the parks heading there, basically Trevor fills that part in, and I handle the rest of that part.
That's not,
He fills it in, but it's in your budget.
Yes, it's in my budget. They don't fill it in, they tell me what they need
So
for their
I'm curious,
employees.
how many people dollar-wise are assigned to you?
There are 3 under parks.
3 full-time people. So that budget's $250,000, $275,000 for labor.
It's broken up basically between all the insurance and MERS and everything else like that. But
You
I mean, it's
you total
for 3 guys, yeah.
700 plus 720, it comes out to 275.
Probably.
Yeah. Or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. But their salaries, that's all that. And we do have, the way Kelly did it this year, we do combine part-timers, so park attendants' wages are also thrown in there, but obviously compared to full-time DPW employees, it's just a little teensy bit.
Understood. I'm set.
Does anybody have any more questions? No? All right.
Awesome.
We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks for letting me use this.
they meet once a month and they do stuff.
Hello, I'm Leah Davis, curator at the Clawson Historical Museum. As far as I'm aware, it doesn't seem like anything really affects us. Does anybody have any questions for me? Okay.
If you don't get money from us, how do you run?
We wouldn't. That's pretty much the only way that we run. I mean, we do little things throughout the year, but we tend to use those funds for presentations. So we had like a presentation this past week, and so we used the money from like this past summer, selling books and stuff like that, to pay for the presenter to come out. But outside of that, the lights won't be on without you guys. So, yeah. Anything else?
What's your budget?
It essentially lands on my pay, which is part-time, and then the just cost of like lights and everything else.
So, is it 20,000, 50,000, 30?
Oh, no, yeah, like this, I think it's about 20,000.
Thank you.
Roughly, yeah. Anything else?
No? Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Don't worry, it's cool. She was wonderful. Her name told her that this
Hello, Joan Norton for the DDA. First of all, as a resident, I want to say thank you to all of you. I think this is amazing that you give your time to do this. I voted for it and all in favor, so good job.
Thank you.
As the DDA, there really isn't, the charter isn't something that regulates us. We're regulated by state law. So how the DDA is allowed to be set up, how it functions, everything from the board of directors on through all of the organizations is already set by state law. So how we're funded, there's a funding source through tax incremental financing, another law that again helps us with it, gives us a means of funding, and that again is another state law. So tax incremental financing, if you've ever heard the term TIF, it's usually referred to as TIF financing. And in short, what that is when the DDA was established in 1990, every parcel is identified and cleared with the state when it's established. These are the parcels, this is what our DDA is going to be. And the properties, the assessment was done then on all of the properties. And when we go in and pay our taxes, they're all collected by the city, but they're given to the county, who then disperses them out. So in the case of those parcels within the DDA, they are still, the county keeps the tax dollars as though it's 1990, based on the 1990 assessment. So if and they're only the properties in the downtown, only those ones identified in the DDA are those tax dollars. So if there was a property, and I'm just going to use a big number just because it's easier, if there was a property that was paying a tax of $10,000 in 1990, the county keeps the $10,000 as though that is the real assessment. If the property now, if they are now paying in 2022 $15,000, the county keeps that 10, the 5 goes to the DDA to make up the budget. And that is, so that incremental difference is what is the main 90% of our budget. The other we fill in with sponsorships, donations, in-kind donations. So that's how we're funded. We hear people sometimes say, we used to hear, and I don't think as much anymore, well, you take tax dollars from the city. No, not really. Actually, we bring more money in that stays in the city. So, and we do all of the events, anything we do we make sure they are cash positive. Those don't come out of our budget. We take in donations and sponsorships to put on any event that we do. So that's pretty much the DDA in a nutshell. I've been the director for 15 years. Hey, Joe?
DDA still levy a millage?
Yes, we levy
1 mil?
2 mil.
You're up to 2.
Yeah, it's always been 2, I believe.
Yeah, and it's rolled back now to 1.7.
Exactly, 1.9 something.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's a mill bring in for you? Or what's that millage bring in?
Oh, not a whole lot, 2,000, that's not a lot.
Okay.
It's a very small portion, the millage. We do have properties, we did add on to the DDA about 7 years ago when the property is on South Main from up to Tacoma, the one block up to Tacoma. So it was really only 5 properties. And they aren't covered by the TIF, but they do, the 2 mills is levied on those. If we do anything, I hear questions occasionally, why don't you make the DDA bigger? Why don't you? Because we can't. If we try to change that TIF area that is established with the state, if we move, say we want to move those boundaries, those other entities that get money from Oakland County, such as Oakland County OCC, SMART, and like 5 entities that the county disperses money to for programs. Any one of those people can decide that they can do what's called opt-out. You're taking, because the county is only keeping the money as though it's 1990, the portion that gets dispersed to them is still based on that same assessment. And if they wanted to say, well, no, we're not good with that anymore. We're not as flush as we were in 1990, and we would like to change that. If we tried to change our boundaries or our TIF boundaries, they could opt out, which would seriously impact the TIF. Anyway.
What was your, I forget what the base amount of your SEV was in 1990. So about 12 million?
Wait, I don't remember numbers offhand. I really have to look at a budget.
My
I
next
bring that
question
with
would
me.
be, what is it today?
I can, what the SEV is, I don't have that in front of me either. I know that our overall budget this year is going to be like 207,000.
That much? That's good. That's good. That's good.
We got the 2 mills as well.
Yeah.
So that's the TIF, the mills.
Typically, the DDAs collect 90%, 90 cents on the dollar over and above what you get from the other taxing jurisdictions. The intermediate school district, OCC,
Yeah, we don't do the IDS, we just have OCC now.
is that what it is? Yeah, I
Yeah.
know in Lake Orion we get, for every dollar the DDA collects, we get an extra 90 cents from the other taxing jurisdictions. And that's the argument for keeping it. And I know when we set our DDA up here, we had less than 1/10 of 1% was residential. We had the condominiums that we,
Right,
because they hadn't
that
been
went
built.
in 1991, they were added in, yeah.
So when I get to Lake Orion, 47% of the DDA is residential. Can you imagine that? We got $170 million worth of project coming in a pipeline, and the DDA is going to have more money than the city.
Well, their DDA is one of those that was one of the reasons I think that the state looked at DDAs a few years ago, because they also take in properties down M24, industrial properties. Our DDA is really one of those traditional ones.
Right.
We're very tight. It's just around the core downtown, and we don't pick up extraneous properties just to try and capture TIF dollars.
Well, they did theirs back in '85, and
Yeah.
I don't know what they were thinking, but they just had a petition drive to get rid of the DDA. I'm sure you know that.
Yes,
You know Barbara, or what's her name?
Molly.
Not Molly, she's from Clausen, the chairman of the board.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, but yeah, you know.
Yeah, DDAs came under attack a few years ago, which was, and then they did look at a lot of it, because there were a lot of people that just had a DDA. Actually, there are some communities that have a DDA that don't even have a downtown.
Right.
They're just capturing tax dollars and bringing it back in the city. They're not spending them on a downtown because they don't have it, and they're not doing reporting. So 2 years ago, they passed new laws that required more transparency and a lot more reporting.
Yeah.
And again, in Oakland County, we are one of the smallest DDAs, and ours is very, very tight. It really is just that downtown core. So somebody asked me in a meeting the other day why we didn't do lights. for Christmas like Rochester does. That's because we don't have $1 million budget, that's why.
Yeah, that's right.
And like I said, everything we do, every event that we do, we rely on sponsorship dollars. A lot of the things that we do downtown, artwork, the arch that we put up this year, all those things were in-kind donations and sponsorships. So we rely on the goodness of others a lot.
John, are there grants available as well? I feel like there's been a couple of grant programs here and there.
We're always looking at grants, and we are also a member of the National Main Street Center, of which Main Street Oakland County is actually our countywide our countywide program that gives us a lot of support. We get grant dollars and funding for programs through them.
Through there, right? Like it was like the gift card program. Was that Main Street?
That was that was part of Main Street. Some funding that we got from them and some things that we got because of COVID, and we turned that into the Downtown Dollars program, where it had matching dollars. If you bought a gift card, you got another one in kind. The program is still on. The matching dollars isn't there. We have, for the past 2 years, though, gotten money from Consumers Energy to do matching dollars. So the hope is that they'll want to do that again this year. So we're always on the lookout for free money. Are there any questions? Well, thank you. Thank you for asking me here, and good job and good luck to you all.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Appreciate all you do.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello. How you doing? So, I don't really have anything specific. I think that you guys you can read, you have input, you have guidance, you have lawyers, you have all sorts of things. I wanted to just talk a little bit about why, because I think I have spent the last year listening to people put words in my mouth and say what they think I think and what they think I believe and all sorts of things. And by the way, apparently I don't believe I've talked to most of you for quite some time, other than a quick, hey, Reese, do you know where so-and-so is to get hold of them? Or, hey, where can I put this thing over here? But I think some people seem to think that a different thing about the relationship I might have with any of you. So I think maybe what I'd like to spend some time is setting the record a little bit straight, take my opportunity. So one of the reasons that I believed very strongly in a charter commission is all of the things on the initial part of your list. The things that all the attorneys came in and said, these are things you must change. These are things that are drastically outdated. They are confusing to people who don't know that they're drastically outdated. It is confusing to read line after line about superseded by and this date of this. It's not productive, it's confusing, and it's a good thing. You can't do these things piece by piece. It has to be done all at once. So I think that was a big reason. And at its core, the reason that I believed in it, the reason I thought it was important, the reason I ran for mayor in the first place, the reason I did most of the things I did, was that I always had my objectives. I'm going to share those so they can't be put in my mouth again by other people. One of my first and biggest objectives was a city that serves its people. And that's what a charter is supposed to outline, is how does a city serve its people? Serve its residents, serve its people. I wanted the city to be functional, highly functional, not barely functional, not just getting by, not limping along, not crawling on its knees, but functional at a high level with best practices, following the law. All sorts of ways. If you follow the law, if you look at best practices, if you do these things, then that rather eliminates issues of ethics, problems. It naturally leads to being the best. I mean, Usually we don't sit around and say, oh my God, that city over there, they got in trouble, so-and-so got this, they did this wrong, they did that wrong. No one's sitting there saying, but they are the best ever. No. In order to be the best, you have to do things that are the best. And the charter can help set the tone for that. It can help set the parameters, the outline. It's our Constitution. It sets how that happens. And there's all sorts of devil in the details, and many people can disagree on some of those details and come to, hopefully, some civil conversation agreement on it. But regardless, the purpose of the charter is to set that tone for a highly functional city. I also would like to hope that the charter is forward-thinking, that everybody looks ahead and says, what is the city that we want to be? Not the city that we were. We can always embrace our history. It is excellent to be proud of the heritage, to be proud of the history and the people that have come before and done wonderful things. But what are we going to do for the next generation? Who are we going to be for the people that are coming after us? Do we want to be a town that's associated with bigotry, racism, insularism, provincialism? Or do we want to be a town that's looking ahead and saying we want to be sustainable, we want to be open, we want to be welcoming, we want to be part of something better? And again, I think that a charter can help do some of that. A lot of charters, I think the one thing, contrary to popular belief, that I said to, I'm not sure every one of you, but several of you, when this all started, I think one of the I honestly cannot remember another thing, and you are all welcome to correct me, but I think the one thing I said is the only thing I really would like to see in the charter is a statement up front that we do not discriminate. Because it doesn't matter what the federal law is, what the state law is. When you say what you believe, you have to say it. You have to build it into your DNA with words. So if we don't say it, then we have nothing to base that on. That statement that maybe we are welcome and opening. So, there is all sorts of things that I am sure, if anybody has questions or things, like I said, a lot of people have said things I've said, and so, or thought, or whatever, that have never come out of my mouth or been part of, so you're welcome to ask me questions. But at the heart of it, if I was to say it, I just simply hope that those things are in your heads, in your thoughts, when you're putting this together, when you're looking at these things, because I think it is very important. And I'm going to tell a little story about one of the reasons I do think it's important, and one of the things that I've just been so disappointed and brokenhearted about. I'm about to put you on the spot. Sorry. So, I have heard evil things coming out of people's mouths in this town. I don't understand it. I don't know where it came from. I don't know how people went from. Joan and I have been friends for a while. We are on opposite sides of the political spectrum. We don't spend our time talking about it. We don't spend our time agonizing over it or hating each other over it. We focus on the things that we believe in and agree on. One of those being the city. Her work in the downtown has always been amazing to me. For the things that I know that maybe other people won't know. The $20,000 a year she earned for all those years. I don't know anybody who would do that job for what she's made. And she's done it well. We focus on those things when we talk. We don't focus on on where we disagree. I know that you are a very religious person. I know that your kids go to the Guardian Angels. I know that we don't share a lot in common politically. But I know from our first conversation that we share caring about people, caring about the city, caring about getting to know the people that our neighbors, that we support, that we talk to, knowing at least that about them. We never talked about deep political divides. We just talked about families and things we'd like to see and simple things like that. I know you're also very religious too. And I have read many of your posts, and I have been so astounded at the stands you've taken. Because you've taken positions that were not popular with a lot of your people. You stood for your values, your beliefs, but you stood up and said, but you're being hypocritical. We can't be hypocritical. We have to stand by what we've always said we believe in. Those were not easy things to put out there. Deep respect for that. Different sides of that. I'm over here, I'm not a religious person, but deep respect for that. I don't think I've ever said to anybody that you shouldn't be here, you don't belong here because of your faith or your beliefs. But it's been said to me. And I will never forget this because it is both hilarious if you were to actually think about it and brave and just so bizarre. I don't even know the words to describe it. So in that awful meeting where people decided to be angry and they didn't, there is one more thing I want to say about that on the side, where people were just angry and upset and screaming and yelling and vicious. As I go to walk out, a woman jumps in front of me and screams at me, or starts to advance on me, starts to scream at me, yelling at me, to get out of Clawson and go to Ferndale. What do you think that meant? What do you think that meant? Get out of Clawson and go to Ferndale. And in steps this woman. She jumps in front of this woman who is so angry she has literally got spittle coming out of her mouth, screaming at me to go back to Ferndale. And this woman jumps in her face and tells her how inappropriate she is and to back down. Okay, I'm just going to point out. Okay. I'm just going to say. Barely know her. We've just talked over a few things. She didn't need to do that. But even she recognized that's not how we behave. I still don't understand. Go back to Ferndale. What if I'd been black? What if she'd have said, get out of Clawson and go back to Detroit? What if she'd have said, go back to the synagogue? What if she'd have said, go back to the mosque? I don't know what she thought about Ferndale. I'm not sure what she thinks she knows about me. And anything she thought, I don't care because it would all be okay in my world. Whatever she thinks I might be, that's okay. But that is what I mean when I say it's here, it's alive, it's wrong. So, and I've got only one thing that might be kind of specific to what you might look at. There's a lot of people that think, and by the way, the other thing that I think was evil is how people have treated George Georges. Calling him a traitor, denigrating him, his family, making it personal. Personal because he stepped up. They didn't like what I did. To accuse me of breaking rules and being corrupt and all the things that have been said, you guys have been reading this charter like crazy. Has anybody figured out where I violated the charter yet? Where I did something legally wrong? Politically, disagree with me all day long. I'm good with that. I get it. We can have that argument. But can anybody point and say where I did something illegal, corrupt, whatever? No, and you know why? Because what everybody wanted was the next highest vote. That, my friends, is called ranked choice voting. We do not have that in our charter. It's not a bad thing to put in. It's not a bad thing to consider. I leave that up to you to decide. But to have everybody scream about something that they want, that they think it should be, doesn't mean that that's the way it is. We don't have ranked choice voting. There is no next best person or highest vote. It's just not the way it works. I took advantage of what was missing in the charter. I leave it to you guys to decide how to tighten up that charter, how to make it better or stronger or more clear for everybody that comes after. And I know you're all going to do a really good job. For real. So, is there anything anybody would like to ask me? Yes?
First of all, thank you for your kind words. I was blushing. And,
Probably because we're hot.
Yeah, but that was very kind, and thank you for sharing. I do want to point out to the commission that several of the other charters that we've looked at from other cities do have a statement of non-discrimination in the preamble, so that is something that other cities have adopted, as you pointed out. And thank you for making a strong public case for non-discrimination being part of our charter. You said the devil is in the details, and so I'm glad that you're here tonight because out of everybody that I know, I wouldn't have been surprised if you had a charter in your back pocket like people carry a constitution. I'm just wondering if you can expound a little on what are some of those details in your time working with the city that turned out to be devils, if you will? Details in our charter as it's written now. You pointed out right now
I was gonna say, I think I gave one. I think
a
you-
very big example that we've talked about, but are there any others that come to mind right away? I mean, we've talked about archaic language
Right.
in this group already, but things in the charter that made it difficult for the city to serve its people, be highly functional, or follow best practices.
And some of this, I don't, I know what's in it, but that's why you have attorneys. I don't know necessarily what is the best route to take on some of these things. But I think that it was a shame that the charter got this outdated in the first place. There is a mechanism out there. Charters can only be updated twice. I think, or 2 updates every election cycle, or, and I can't remember if that's a 4 or 2 year, whatever, but it has to go through a long process, just like you, just like you. So what happens when nobody looks at that and on an ongoing basis is that we get terribly outdated, just as we have. And I don't know if putting in the charter an ongoing charter commission is what belongs in the charter, but a group that, you know, once you guys are tired, worn out, and time to move on, and, you know, but a group that can look at that on an ongoing basis and just make those kind of changes. When state law changes, these don't have to be controversial things, just simply get those things in there as they come up. So this kind of drama and hard work and isn't necessary, right? It just maintains itself. So that would be one thing, and I don't know if that's something that can go in the charter, but.
I mean, some cities do require
Standing
a
charter committees.
review process.
They have
every
a
2 years.
standing charter commission that every year, you know, looks at, like I said, they can only do 2, you know, what needs to be changed, that kind of stuff, and they make those as they go. Yeah, I think Troy has one. Not 100% sure, but for some reason it sticks in my head that they have one. So I think there are cities that have it. So that's, you know, these things that go on, you have to be careful not to put too much in the charter, because you don't want to be locked into something. I mean, too much, yeah. I mean, it has to be flexible. It has to be, that's what ordinances are for, to fill in some of those things. And ordinances are easier to change as times change. You know, I don't, because I think some of them are just simply debatable as to, is this the best way to do it? Is this the best way to do it? You got to figure it out. And some things we have may not be like the bestest way to do it, but then again, the alternative might also not be the bestest way to do it. You know, you can look at, I would just be careful not to look at everything that's happened wrong and assume that that means it has to be changed. Sometimes, you know, it can be right and just people go crazy.
James Madison said you can't write a perfect constitution.
Exactly.
Because there are people involved.
Precisely. Anybody else?
That's what I was going to ask you, just like what specifics, you know, what things cropped up in your time that, you know, and please, you know, think of something later, because, you know, when you're put on the spot.
The thing is, you guys are all here, anybody can send you an email, a message, hey, I thought about this, would you guys consider this? I mean, I looked at your list, you're thinking of the things that you should think of. Do you expand council, do you keep it the same? Do you, you know, the council can appoint a mayor, or you can elect a mayor. You know, it can be a rotate. There's so many different ways to do it. And again, I would say don't necessarily be reactionary. Look at other cities too, what's worked and what's not, and, you know, kind of think that way. But these are all options. I don't have necessarily an answer for every problem, but I do know that, you know, there's lots that can be improved, lots that can be done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you
being
very
here.
Hello, Paula Lawn, resident, acting mayor, served on city council for 4 years and also served on the planning commission. So in my 5 years serving in the city of Clawson, I've seen the bulk of the issues that have arisen. I would say in the beginning, I've said this publicly to this body before, I was not necessarily in favor of a charter revision. I think looking at the list that was provided by your attorney of necessary updates, things such as gender neutral terminology, looking at statutes, requirements for council eligibility, requirements of residency for a city manager, obsolete sections. Those things are addressed within the charter already by state or other updates, and all are valid, right? I think there are some items under the possible updates to be considered that actually would probably be good to be considered. And as you know, I've followed what you've done and I've sat in some of your meetings, and I'm really intrigued by the whole process of all of this now. I don't think that there's a lot that we should probably adjust. I think being using brevity in much of what is said is a good idea. I think who we are is implied by who we are as a community. I don't think we need to identify everything out specifically. I think that is limiting in ways. What's considered something today will not be considered the same in 5 years. And you'd hate to limit ourselves or identify ourselves as something that may seem extremely positive forward thinking now, but maybe extremely limiting and not so much in 5 years. So I'd like to throw that out there. I appreciate Mayor Scripture's comments. She also was part of a lot of things that happened. I think a lot of those things that happened were less to do with the charter and more to do with finding a way to achieve an end, right? And I think that's the important part to remember when we're doing this. You've had a lot of people come before you and speak what's important to them. You had city employees come and say, basically, please take council out of our dealings. And not exactly that, but kind of that, right? They want more authority about who has authority. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about that because it affects everyone. And that's my primary item I'd like to address today, is item 4.11, which says expressly authorize city manager to oversee department and department heads. I would say that it seems like this is done implicitly already. The employees, whether they're appointed by city council or not, work with the city manager on a day-to-day basis. That is their director. That is the person who tasks them. That is the person who directs them, knows when they're deficient, knows when they're overachieving, as mostly happens in our case, right? Overachieving. I would say that when I first looked at who's responsible for whom, city attorney makes sense that the city council would appoint a city attorney. City clerk does not make sense for the city council to appoint. The treasurer seems a little weird given the treasurer's responsibilities. But given situations that we've encountered over the past several years, I would say it's really critical to have those delineations of power, to have people be appointed by someone other than perhaps the person who is in charge of everything. Therefore, no one is in charge of everything, even though it's not supposed to be in charge of things. It's supposed to be a team thing. So just to create a team that is separation of power, separation of thought, of idea of who is valuable to a team, as opposed to one person putting their stamp on a bunch of tenured employees, mostly who will be there for 30 years, gives the opportunity for someone else to have an impact on deciding what other characteristics might be good. Now, in saying that, that means that we need a cohesive team, right? We have a legislative and an administrative branch with the city council and with the city manager. That has to work. That has to function together. The goals have to be set. The ambitions have to be similar. The willingness to work together and to see success just has to be part of the system, and that's something that clearly has to be worked on in order to achieve in any organization. And right now, in this one, you gentlemen have both served as city manager, and I would implore you to say, has it been problematic to you to have someone serve in a capacity that you didn't hand select? Because think about it, when you join an organization anyways, you're taking whoever is there, most likely. You're not coming in and saying, I don't really like Joe in DPW, I'm going to get rid of him and bring in my friend Steve from wherever I just came from, and then set up a powerhouse of your people so that you can run a little fiefdom, right? That's not what it's supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about a bunch of people from different thoughts with different goals, but joining goals, coming together to achieve good on behalf of all of us, the residents. So I would hope that you would look at it for that reason, because I feel like that's done, and it can be handled through job descriptions, through many different layers, to ensure that a city manager feels that he has the appropriate say on these people that city council appoints. And realistically, those people work with him every day. It's not us who know. The city council doesn't know if they come in at 7:15 or they come at 11, or if they're leaving at 2 or they're staying until 7:30 in the evening. We don't know that. We're not following that. We're not into the minutia. But that separation, I really feel, is important. It's just a separation of duties. It's a separation of powers that joins together to create a better power. So that, I think, is important. I think we've seen a little of that where it would just be beneficial. And I would say that if everyone's gearing, if there appear to be sides, that's the last thing we want. We want something that doesn't appear to have sides. We want to create this cohesiveness in the middle. So whatever you build, let's build it so we can create a cohesiveness in the middle. There's another section about, let's see, the council vacancies. Now clearly that's an issue, right? I served on planning. My first year I came into Clawson, I started on the planning commission. I served there for 4.5 years until I decided to run for city council. When I ran for city council, I had to relinquish my seat on the planning commission, which makes no sense, but I did. That wasn't a big deal. But then last year, when I decided to run for mayor, and someone else also decided to run for mayor from council, that left 2 seats on the council that we both had to relinquish. I think that's not a problem. I personally don't have a preference if you have to give up a seat or not. I kind of enjoyed my couple months off, to be honest with you. It was a good reset for me. And I think, maybe it's a good thing. I understand their intent is to not allow someone the unfair advantage to campaign from within inside in a serving position. And that's fine. But that needs to be looked at so that there is a set policy of how we're going to fill those seats for those couple of months that someone may be off to go do something else. Let's say someone runs off a planning commission and they don't win their seat on council. Let's give them the opportunity to go back to planning, right? Let's build in something so that we're not getting rid of willing volunteers should their outcome not come as they wanted. But let's set up something so that we're filling the seats on a temporary basis. There is an established process for what happens, whether they win or lose, right, to complete those seats again, which is really only an issue for an elected person, because if it's a board or commission, we'll just appoint someone if someone wins, so that's kind of easy. But a clear set process on that would be nice. This talks about an ethics ordinance. I don't see that there's any problem with it having it established through the charter, because that should be just a given anyways, although we do now have ethics ordinances and a committee, so that's kind of doubled. I think my ultimate concern for all of this is just that everything that you write is concise, that there's not room for personal interpretation, because I think that's really what happened in much of these things that happen. If there's no hard line to keep something straight, most people are not going to try and subvert the system. Clearly we've had this charter for a lot of years, and there hasn't been as much drama as there has been in the last couple of years. And I would say it's not because anybody tried to do anything to subvert the charter. Things happened and it was there, and the interpretation was such. So clear and concise, lacking ambiguity, to allow for an even playing field for all people, and to ensure that the rules are followed no matter the players, and that the city manager and the city council, even if the city manager and city council change, as they do and as they will, that the rules are still the same, and that it's understandable, and that there's no room for anyone to come in and just do a quick change on anything. That's pretty much it, I guess. So I want to say thank you. I think that I'm of the belief that you don't have to state everything. Just be concise and brief, but explicit in the instructions. And no 2 places with the same info, right? Because I think I've been told that part of the reason we couldn't address a recent issue is because it's states one thing in one place and another in another. So make sure that doesn't happen either. Yes, sir?
Something that came to my attention within the last month, that the campaign finance laws preclude an elected official from making any political statements or from running for office or anything like that while sitting at a board like this. You cannot do that. You're in violation of the law and you can be prosecuted for that. So it's up to your city attorney, if you've got a good one, that will do it across the board. I don't think our present city attorney knows how to do that, but that's just me. I'm watching what he's done in the past. You have to treat everybody the same across the board. So it's the people you have in the position and how they act per the charter, the ordinances, how they act. You can't legislate. There's only so much you can put in this charter. Okay? And I agree with some of the things that you said. And I think it's a good idea to not have to relinquish a seat. That's my thought. Because people don't want to give up their seat on the if count. Now I'm thinking more of, let's suppose you wanted to run for state rep and you're a perfectly good mayor. People want you to be mayor. You shouldn't have to lose your seat. And you can pick your time to run. That betters Clausen. That's better all the way around. Now, if people in the community don't like you, they won't vote for you for state rep or whatever. But to be able to grandstand, the campaign laws do not allow for that. Anyway, the other aspect of it is the culture. The culture within the organization. I know that when I was here, that I was flat out told by the mayor, and I worked for several, that I was the boss. And the treasurer and the clerk, everybody worked for me. Now, did I crack a whip? No. I have my management style has been participative. But my point is, everybody's on the same page. You can't have 5 people running off in 5 different directions. And if the council will back the manager as to the philosophy and the culture of the organization, and you back your appointed officials, and that the manager holds the rudder, then you're going to be a lot farther ahead. I think a lot of times the things that we got that I've observed is where city council is starting to micromanage and get right out of their lane completely. Don't have a clue, want to talk the thing to death. Come into City Hall, tell the city manager one-on-one what they're doing, and that's a no-no, and they should be brought up on charges. And you can do that in court. You can do that.
I think,
And I observed that myself. I was here and I saw it. And I told the guy to get out of the city hall. You shouldn't do that. You're violating the charter. That's not fair. Now, to come into City Hall and converse with the city manager, by all means. By all means. But to tell them what to do on the agenda? Are you kidding me?
Brad, did you have?
so wait, I would like to respond though.
sorry.
So there's a balance, right? And
Yes.
and this is that's what this is about, right? Our
Right.
charter is about establishing a balance. And the balance is, there's a legislative branch and there's a city manager. The city manager ultimately gets their marching orders from the city council. Would you agree to that? You said the city
You
manager.
set policy through the budget
Right.
document.
So, is it the council's responsibility to go in and say, hey, I don't want this guy working on this job, hey, you
No.
need to do da-da-da?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. I will agree with that 100%. I don't think we need to write that in the charter because it's not part of it, but there does have to be a common respect that, to understand that everyone has a role and to respect those roles. Because the legislative portion is just as important as the day-to-day operations because it sets the tone. And that has to be clear in the document that the city council and the mayor are not effectively just a rubber stamp for the city manager. If that's the case, then we don't need a city council, and I'll say that right now because we all put in a lot of time to do things. And not speaking about any specifics, but if that's going to be the case, if people want to look at it in that term, then get rid of the city council and just hire an administrator to run your city and let them do it on their own. But that's not what we have, and that's not what it should be, because there should ultimately be a balance. There should be conversation. There should be a joining together at some point. Someone's going to be happy. Sometimes people aren't happy, but that's part of the process, right? You have to follow the process to get to those things. But it's establishing that every role is important. Every role has lines in it. Every role deserves to be respected for whatever it is supposed to be. Yes, sir? Oh, wait, she's the discharge. I'm sorry.
I apologize.
Habit, I'm
I
sure.
wasn't sure he was, that you
Finished. Oh.
that you wanted to talk after him, so I
Okay,
apologize
that's okay.
for that. But Brad, did you have something?
I do, Madam Chair. So I have just a couple of clarifying questions and then a little bit of an open-ended question for the mayor. I heard that you identified one problem, I'll call it a problem, and that is something we've already talked about in here, people having to give up their seats in order to run for office. So that's something we've talked about. You're recognizing that that has caused some issues and is something to address. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I would say, let me just clarify what you're saying. I would say if it is defined clearly, it is not an issue.
Yes.
If it is not defined clearly, there's potential for an issue.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? It's 100% contingent upon the players every single time how anything ends up, how it plays out. It's 100% contingent upon who is willing to go one extra step, who's on the team, who's going to say, no, they're okay. I mean, there's a lot of things, right? Like, I don't like to look at things from the standpoint of worst case scenario. I don't live my life that way. I don't want to be part of that. I personally think put them down, put the rules down. Most people are going to play by them because they signed up to play on a team. They did not sign up to be the king or the emperor. They want to be part of the team. They want to be part of a successful thing that works together. You shouldn't have to, by minutia, define every step in a process. In something like this. That's the beauty of a living document like the charter, is that it's there, but it's supposed to be able to flex just a little bit. It's not supposed to, you shouldn't have to define it all. It's not a policies and procedures manual, it's a charter, it's an idea, it's a thought process, it's goals and objectives.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I wrote down the word delineate, I think 3 times in the notes that I was taking, so I'm asking for a little more clarity on that. One of the big points that you made had to do with the role and responsibility of city council, and then city manager, and then city employees. Could you be a little more clear or specific about what particular, I was trying to understand a little more about what you were trying to say you think would work or is not working there, or is working very well that you wouldn't change?
I would say that if everyone's roles are fully defined and understands their roles, understands their roles, not just goes whatever, and understands everyone else's roles, shouldn't be an issue. Like, nothing should be an issue. I can only speak for myself serving on the council. Never once wanted to manage City Hall. I have lots of other things to do. I wanted to be a city manager once, but didn't pursue it, right? I went on to another line of work, been there for a long time. I probably would have loved it, and maybe in my next life, maybe I'll want to do that, but I certainly don't want to do it now, and especially not when we pay someone who's capable to do their job. Like, I don't want people stepping on my toes. I don't want to step on other people's toes. That's me personally. Other people are very passionate and like to get involved in things and have a hard time sometimes remember or identifying where the lines are, but that's an individual thing and not something that the body is responsible to fix. That's something that someone has to, that's an individual thing, right? And we have several people who like to do things, like, it's not one person in the history of this city, it's happened before, and that's about respect and relationship, being able to work through those things, to not be offended because someone asks you the same question 85 times and you've answered it 84 times and you don't want to answer it the next time. Like, that's respect, right? Those are the minutia things we shouldn't even be dealing with. The important thing is, what does our charter say the city council's responsibilities are? There they are. What does the council say the city manager's responsibilities are? Who is the city manager responsible to? The city council is responsible to the residents. The city manager is responsible ultimately to the city council, first and foremost, right? They can't get in and manage every day, but they do have input. They are an actual viable body. They do have authority within the scope of authority they're given. They're not a non-entity. And those things need to be defined. City Hall employee, all of the employees of the city are managed by the city manager. The city manager is the hands and feet of the operation, right? They're the ones that get everything done. So of course they belong to them, even if they're appointed by city council. And I explained this appointment thing, like I feel like it's a valid thing at this point to have that separate avenue for people to come in so that it's not one person identifying all things.
Madam Chair, my last question, if you don't mind. Looking at section 4.05 in the current charter, I'm reading this as an example. The mayor shall be the conservator of the peace and may exercise within the city the powers conferred upon sheriffs to suppress disorder.
Quell a riot, Paula.
Let's think.
My question is, if you could, because people are going to watch this later on and maybe they haven't read the charter, what is your understanding of the mayor's role distinct from other members of the city council? And have you found that to be problematic at any point? Have there been limitations or things that you wish you could do or things you wish you didn't have to do or things that you think would work a little smoother? I'm asking the expert.
Well, not an expert at anything. I will always
now.
say never an expert at anything. I will say that I don't, that the mayor role is ceremonial, first and foremost, and that's an honor. It's an honor to have that position and to be a face of the community, especially one like this, right? That's the ultimate goal. Being a mayor, people assume you have power or authority, and it's always fun to say, no, I don't have that authority, right? I always just push people back to our city manager. That's what we do. I think that role in suppressing the peace or whatever, that's like an extreme situation, and I think that is a governmental position, right? To say that if it comes to something extremely tenuous in our community or in the world at that point, that the person whom the residents elected would be the face of that determination. Now, if I had to do that, would I do it independently? Absolutely not. I'd be on the phone to the city manager and go, okay, this is what we have to do. I'm assuming he would do most of the work, whomever would be there at the point of time, and then together, collectively, we would make whatever determination needs to be made, but I think that's basically just the face of, again. And I think it's set up for that. I believe Mr. Raker, when he did an interview with us, stated that I will be the face of the bad news, council and mayor will be the face of the good news, and if it wasn't you, I'm giving you credit for something really good, because it was a great thing to say. And it might have been another candidate, but it was during that, might have been you, was it you? No. Anyway, some wise man said that once, and it's true, right? So I think serving as mayor, would it be great for the mayor to have a different line of authority of some sort? Maybe, because honestly, it feels like it's a non-thing, right? It's a non-thing. Someone gave me a gavel, so I have one. I actually have two. One at work. I can play with it there too. But someone gave me a gavel, and I get to, intervene questions and try and facilitate conversation. And I hope I'm better than I was a year ago, and that I know when to shut down certain conversations where I wouldn't have a year ago, because it's all about free speech. But we're all learning and moving and going as we go, which is what this charter is. I would say we don't have a lot of things wrong. There are a lot of things in the charters that will never happen, that probably never ever happen, that are there for whatever. Should we change our fiscal year? I don't know. Talk to our finance director and our accountants. Is it necessary? No. Could we do it? Absolutely. Would it affect us? Just the first year, right? It wouldn't affect us beyond the first year.
What do you think about the term of mayor? 'Cause the mayor's term is shorter than the council. If the mayor is basically, you know, a city council member with a ceremonial angle, should they, do you think, in your opinion, should they also have a 4-year term?
I mean, not because I'm doing it right now, because I don't know, 2 years seems, 1 year seemed like a really long time, and 2 years might do me in, but I might want 4. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to speak that, but I do feel like it doesn't make sense for it to necessarily be 2.
Right.
It just doesn't, and because it's a short time, and elections are, they're a lot. It's a lot to do an election. So for that reason, and that's kind of personal, right? Just to say, oh my gosh, do I have to do that again? But look, we have people who successfully have done that for lots and lots of years, and they did it on the 2-year term, and you're just you're swapping out councils is all you're doing then, right? You're not giving it an opportunity to really get a cohesiveness in 2 years. It takes a year, realistically, before you get used to the people you're sitting next to. After you get used to everyone's peculiarities, because we all have them, and once you get used to those, then you get to a point where you can really just start, like, you get along better after a while, just because you're like, whatever, that's just so-and-so, that's just what they do. Doesn't really mean as much as I took into it in the first part. So maybe, for that reason, not a very cohesive answer, but maybe, like, realistically, maybe.
Yeah, no, makes sense.
So quick review here, there's been a lot of back and forth on the authority of the city council and the mayor versus the city manager. So it sounds like you agree that the city council and mayor should have legislative oversight over the city manager.
They do.
Correct?
Yeah, I mean,
Correct.
they do. I do agree with that. Sorry, I don't mean to, like, stop you, but.
All right, but the city manager should run the day-to-day operations,
Absolutely.
execute the day-to-day, which, do you agree should include review authority, annual review authority on all employees,
I
including
think-
the city clerk and the...
Yes,
Okay.
with input, right? So city clerk is, like, day-to-day, we're not part of. We don't know day-to-day.
Okay.
I can tell you city clerk is real easy to review for me, because anything that happens that's big, anything that happens that's basically not good is probably big enough that it comes to everyone's attention.
Okay.
What I care about as a council person with the city clerk is, are your meeting minutes accurate? Are they consistent? Do you respond equally to everyone? And I mean all boards and commissions and the city council. I think that's the responsibility of the city clerk, and I feel like the city council can very aptly review those traits and give an accurate understanding of what they're doing. Because those are their primary functions, right? And then running elections and stuff. Now, the election thing, not involved in the elections. I don't know what happens all day today. I sent a text today, said, hope you have a good day. I didn't look to see if he even had time to respond to me. You know, he has extra functions, but the main functions are to serve as secretary to you guys, right? And to be responsive, and to do the same for us, and to also be responsive. City council has 100% ability to react on that. What I think would be beneficial would be to also have the city manager's input on that review, because the day-to-day functions about, are you supporting your team? Are you cohesive with City Hall? Do you respond to me when I have questions and concerns? Those things. That's a separate angle. And I think in most organizations, there are often multiple people involved in employee reviews, because most of us have multi-functions that are cross teams and cross training. So absolutely, it would be essential.
You believe it should be a collaborative effort?
I do think it should be a collaborative effort.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
He's got seniority.
So I asked Mary Harris if she wanted to do 4 years. Because I've been in communities where they appoint the mayor from the council.
Mm-hmm.
And that's typically a year or 2 years. And I agree with you that once you get in there and you learn your job, 2 years is too short. And I think you should have you or whoever might be the mayor should have a 4-year term. I just believe that. The other thing about the thing of calling sheriffs, that's language that goes way back.
Right.
And that is outdated now by incident command. And I'd leave it to Mr. Riker, he would know that better than anybody, being in the military. But, you know, you as a mayor, me as a city manager, we're behind the police chief, what do you need? And what can I get for you? You know, the incident command, and we have there's a whole process through Oakland County and the state of Michigan and everything, so we're really out of that. All we're doing is, how much money do you need? You know, can I get you some money, and can I get you some supplies, and that type of thing. But I agree with you. I don't think you should give up your seat necessarily, and I think the mayor's term should be 4 years. I don't think you should just get a 2-year term and everybody else gets a bigger bite of the apple. I just don't agree with that.
I would say, you didn't ask me, but I'll say it anyways, regarding having like the mayor appointed by the council, I worked in a community where they did that, and it's a politics game, and I don't think it's fair. I think a community this size especially, they're proud of whomever they select for whatever position, right? Whether it be school board or your mayor or your city council. I think having that distinction is very nice. I am amazed how many people will say to me, oh my gosh, you're the mayor of Clawson? Oh my gosh. And I just always laugh and go, yeah, oh my gosh, like you have no idea like how much of a thing it is not, because, you know, as far as responsibility goes, but it is such a thing because you're proudly representing your community. And any of us who serve, you guys all serve. It's so hard to remember sometimes why you're actually doing what you're doing, right? You're not doing it because it's necessarily fun or because everyone's going to love you that day or because you're not going to make some enemies, whatever. You're doing it to elicit change and to do good. And that's what this document needs to say. It needs to say that whatever this community selects for all of us, that it's to do good for the community, period. And I think that's your overall task.
A couple questions, Mayor. Term limits, any place in our city charter?
I think with this community being such as it is, small, and I would take school board this time, 4 seats, 4 people, probably did a good job to get 4 people to run. I think if we look at recent elections, I don't think we have I think we should let people serve until people get burnt out on their own, right? And we have a voice. People have the voice and the opportunity to vote people out if they don't want them to be there. I don't think term limits in a local community is necessarily great. I know some communities have people who are there for 20 years and,
Wasn't Palmer here 40?
But I don't know. I don't see it as a bad thing. I think if people are willing to serve and they can encourage the voters to put them in place, let them be in place.
So another question, vacant council offices. So I've worked in communities where the next man up, in terms of he was the first loser in the last election, he or she got moved up to a vacant position for typically the term, not just for the next election. I've worked other places where the council has said, you know, let's have open interviews, and they put a notice in the paper, and people have come forward, and they've had their 3-minute interview in front of the council, and then the next person, and so forth. This town always did, I think it was there was always, you know, some interview process, or someone's name was brought forward, obviously. What's your feeling on how a vacancy should be filled?
I think it's less important that how they're filled. It's just more important that it's fully defined. That's my ultimate thought. But I think, like, if we're talking the last election where there was a seat and that whole incident took place the day after, it would have made sense to put the next runner up. It would sense, right? Not that it's mandated. It would make sense to satisfy voters who just took the time to go out and vote, to put the person that was next in line in that seat. Under that circumstance, of course. If it's middle of a year, I mean, I don't know, if I ran for an office and then it's a year later, I might not have interest in serving in that office anymore, but there's nothing wrong with asking, I guess. I know when I had to give up my seat for Planning Commission, when Debbie Woolley, well, I don't know, at some point there was an opening on the city council, and they were taking applications. They did interviews, so I interviewed with them for that seat, along with, I think Kathy Phillips interviewed, and then a couple other people whom I don't know. And then ultimately they decided to not fill that seat until after the election. So that was a case of someone had to resign. I think it was Debbie Woolley probably had to resign to run for mayor. That's what it was. And then they had that, so that ended effectively the end of July, sometime July. So there was a vacancy until November. And originally, they read that the charter said you had to appoint within 30 days. I think that's what it says. They decided after interviewing that it would be best to not even appoint because they felt it would be more of a distraction to put someone in for a couple months just to pull them out than to put someone in. So they did nothing. But I don't know. I think either option is good. I always we elect people. Like, go with what the voters want. We elect them.
One thing that could have happened here, and again, a lot of things could have happened, with an only 5-member council, if a third person would have decided to run for mayor, there in essence wouldn't have been a city council, which would have been very strange. So just, I've never worked in a community where you had to resign, especially
Right.
from an advisory board. That doesn't make any sense
Right.
at all to me, that you have to give up that seat. But I've never, if people politic, here's my comment, that's up to them. And that, again, it's like bad actors do bad things, and you can't legislate, we don't want you to politic.
Right, that's 100% it, right? Like, if someone's going to do something
That's right.
nefarious, they're going to do nefarious no matter what else is going on, and that's...
Exactly.
You don't play to them, you play to the good. Just always play to the good.
That's all I have.
Anything else? Well, I just want to say thank you guys for doing this and for listening to people. I think it's really important. None of us have all the answers or have it right, but we all have a perspective and, you know, a little bit of experience, and those things are important, and you have a lot of tough decisions to make, and I'll be cheering you on. That's all.
Well, we appreciate that you've been coming to more than just this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we thank everybody for being here tonight. Did you want to? We thank everybody for being here tonight, and that concludes our guests who are joining us, and we can continue on to the new business. Yeah, if anybody who came as a guest and wants to continue to stay for the meeting, they're welcome to, but you're not required to stay if you have other things that you had planned. So we appreciate you being here more than you know. Yeah, so thank you so much. But we don't want to feel like you were kicking you out, because we're not doing that either. All right, so new business. Next is going to be for approval of minutes from the October 25th meeting.
I'll move it.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Who seconded it?
Give it to David.
David, okay, thank you.
Okay. And then we'll head to the agenda, item number 7, current business. We were deciding, we talked last week, or last meeting, there had been a few of us who hadn't read through the charter review and revision process timeline, and we decided to wait until tonight to discuss it and decide whether we're going to be, not whether we're going to be using it, but whether we're adapting the timeline. And if somebody wanted, you know, do we have any questions about that? Did everybody get a chance to read it? Brad's here tonight, so he can answer any questions if there are any. Yes.
I have a question. No, I don't have a question. Madam Chair, I was just going to say that, so the schedule I put together and shared, I think it was 2 meetings ago now, that you discussed at the last meeting. And I wasn't here for that meeting. I looked at the minutes. Just so it's clear to everybody, that was a thought exercise of a kind of in order to get this thing on the ballot, this is when we need to get certain things done. And so that meeting by meeting schedule I put together was more or less this is kind of sort of what needs to happen and when it needs to happen in order for us to get to the finish line. So I want to say that I don't know if somebody motioned a vote to say this is going to be our timeline. I don't know that we necessarily need to do that, because if we do that, then we may not have the flexibility to change agendas on an as-need basis. You see what I'm saying?
Well, kind
So
of
it's kind of
what
a
we-
general sweep of where we might go, but then if we hold ourselves to very specific agendas that I laid out as a thought exercise, then we may not be able to change those agendas, or I'm just saying, leave a little flexibility and.
Yeah, when we talked about it last meeting, what we talked about was using it as a general guideline.
Exactly.
Okay.
And what we talked about was that everybody did not have a chance to view
Got
it.
it.
And we were looking for more things like, do the dates make sense? Kind of like somebody going through to look at your thoughts to say, okay, was there anything that stood out that we want to just make a tweak before we went ahead and did it? And we also we didn't really decide, but we also discussed the fact that we can still change the agendas if something comes up. Right, Wayne? Do you
Right.
remember that?
Yeah, it was, we all agreed, I believe, that this is a guideline. It's flexible, and it made sense because we need a roadmap.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great idea.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just really quickly, where, just so, I mean, I read it, but just so I can have it in front of me right now, I'm having trouble finding it. Did it get added to our shared drive somewhere where it's accessible to all of us? 'Cause
Yep, it is. It's on the shared drive, and
Where is
I don't have mine in front of me right now, but it's in one of the folders.
I'll find it real quick.
It was either materials. Can you tell me what the folders' names are?
Yeah, well, it's not going to be an
I'm
attorney.
looking.
It's
Hold on
supposed
just
to
a
be
sec.
approved. There's
Okay.
working documents, meeting notes, processes, reference materials. One of those, perhaps.
Give me just a second, Samantha.
All right. Oh, I have it.
Find it?
Yes, it's under reference materials, the third document there.
Yep, there it is.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, the motion that was on the table was just to accept. I'm looking at the notes from the last meeting that we just approved. And it says, motion by Slawinski to accept the Irwin timetable for the commission going forward. That was it. It was pretty general. And it just failed because it was lack of support, because there were some people who hadn't had a chance to read it.
Yeah, and we really pretty much agreed to let's not vote on it, but you're right. That's
Yeah,
exactly what happened.
let's wait until we all
Give
read
it
it,
2
and
weeks.
then, okay. I
Right.
just wanted to be clear on that.
Yep, that's
Okay.
exactly what happened.
So
Yeah,
do we
I don't
want,
look at it as a cut in stone. I think it's just a roadmap, and it's a good one.
yeah. Yeah, I remember somebody saying that we weren't really behind either, because we had this meeting, since we didn't really talk about it last meeting, this meeting was on there as not being a meeting, because we were thinking
Right.
for election day we wouldn't meet, but we decided to meet anyway.
Attorney's already given us some things that are listed for later.
Yep. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions or wants to make a motion, do we put it off again? Do we go ahead and,
I'd make a motion to adopt it as a flexible roadmap.
I'll
okay.
second. You vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Give it to somebody.
sounds like a great idea. All right, continuing, current business. Oh yeah, we just went and did that. So we're done with that. Any commissioner comments?
No comment.
I don't know if it's a comment, but are we meeting on the 22nd, which is Thanksgiving week? I thought so, wanted to make sure. And we decided also what to do in December?
It's Tracy's birthday.
Yeah, bring in a cake.
Oh,
So-
and you know what?
If that helps you show up, there's going to be cake.
Is it chocolate?
It can be.
please, and I will show up.
I thought you didn't like chocolate.
And the same thing for December 20th?
Well,
I'm sorry, for December 27th.
We did talk about it and say yes, but
We're going? I'm not leaving town, so
I'm not.
at least for me, it doesn't make a difference. I
we
just,
decided
I'm
almost
good.
everybody was around.
I'm good too, and I know
Yeah.
several of you have young kids, so that's all I'm saying is.
well, and I think we thought too, even if we don't have a quorum, people can still meet and discuss.
Okay.
You know, if we don't have enough, then,
We just
you know,
can't
we
vote.
just don't
Right.
vote on anything,
Right.
but we can still keep things moving.
We should have 5 here.
Yeah.
I will be
Yeah, that's
here.
what, if anytime that we meet and there's not a quorum, we can just turn it into a workshop and discuss things.
Yeah.
Right. But the only reason I bring it up is if we have to adjust the date, I'd rather adjust the date than talk, and then at the next formal meeting, we talk about what we talked about at the meeting that wasn't really a meeting.
Yeah, that's fair.
No, that's a good point. No, I don't.
That's, so all I'm saying, I can
Yeah.
somewhat adjust, or especially in advance. You people, at least 2 of you have young, 3 of you have young kids. So that's all I'm saying is you guys know your schedules and what you do in that Christmas break.
Yeah. We don't travel, my family's all in the general area, so.
And when my kids were, we were the same way. We just went from Livonia to Troy and Livonia
Right.
to Troy.
We're doing a few things, and we'll be gone at the beginning of January, but other than that, we should be around.
Good. That was the, all I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, Hurricane Ian took care of me. I'm not going anywhere.
All right.
Yeah, I came across where I stay.
The Gulf side, yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So the other thing is we have, in the packet, there was financial documents. And normally what we do is I go into our finance document and I add the invoices when they come in, and when they're paid, we also add that on there just to make sure that everything matches what their reports are. And I'm going to wait until the next meeting because the report I received, it didn't really have a date that the invoice was paid, and the date of the, excuse me, the name of the report was both open and paid. And I'm not understanding which invoices are still open and which invoices were paid. They all have check numbers, so,
They have a check number, they've been paid.
okay, so there's not like they hold them for, okay, so if there's a check number, then they've been paid.
Yeah, there's-
Okay.
I defer to Joe, but yeah, that's.
Okay, then I
that's in
can
the
go through
process.
those and add them in there. I mean, at a fast glance, it looks like everything's good. There is the, we need a motion to approve the attorney one, invoice number 13535.
I'll move it.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Just one comment, we've spent, looks like $3,870, 19% of our budget, and we're halfway through the year approximately.
Can you please repeat that?
Sure, and this is on page 1 of the backside, just, we had a $20,000 budget, we've spent $3,870, and we've spent 19.35% of our budget. And we're gonna be, we're 5 months into the year, not quite 6 yet. So,
How much was that bill?
the last one,
Did we just approved?
$915. $915. So,
Okay, that's all I need to know. That's all I need.
Yeah, $915. And it's bill 13535. Or invoice 13535.
As we start putting pen to paper, those bills are gonna go up a little bit, but it's good that we're pacing well right now.
You're absolutely right, I think we've done really pretty well.
Okay. Anything else?
How's everybody feel, anybody feel about having all our meetings here?
Because it's around the corner.
Would that make it easier for people at City Hall or would for you?
That's a question I don't know how to answer, and I think there's
We got a comment over here.
many more people involved.
My only question is why?
Because I live around the block.
You live where?
I live a block away.
I know your drive to City Hall is really arduous.
I live about a quarter mile away. I think everyone lives about a quarter mile away from someplace in town. I just want to know.
Yeah. It just seems like, I don't know, it
Is
seems
it
like a
more
better
conducive
place.
to the public to come? I guess I don't want to be less conducive to the public
Well,
to come.
I do know that Merge Media,
This is a community center.
they really did a good job of coming in. They had to reset how everything was set up, making sure the camera worked, and it was a little extra work
Oh,
for
was it?
them.
Okay.
And they had to scope out the place, they had to figure out which building to use, which part of the building to use, how it
Right.
was gonna work. They had to set the tables up, and
That's fine. I'll say that we couldn't just leave these here. They use this for other.
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
this is, I think
Let's
this
throw
is
it out
their
there.
senior room, so.
I sort of like City Hall because I think most people think that's where business is transacted. And I wish we could use the council chambers. And it's not an ego trip, obviously, but I just think, that's why I asked you, is there a reason?
Yeah, I mean, it's.
Do people find
Well,
this
this is a
a little?
community center, so the community would be welcome.
Absolutely. And
Right.
people find this not as, more
Right.
friendly approaching.
You're not going to the government, you're coming to a community.
Exactly. And that's why I asked, is there have
Yeah.
people mentioned things to you?
No.
Okay.
This is a great alternate, I think, for sure, and I'm very appreciative.
Yeah,
that we were able to do
absolutely.
it.
I don't know if they would agree to it. I don't know if they'd want us here.
Well, we're taxpayers,
We're here listening.
and the people have put us here.
It's true. Just throw it out there.
So we do get some
Commissioner
authority.
Irwin, did you have something to add?
Shut me down.
You had your hand up.
Oh, Madam Chair, just
Stretching.
censure the Commissioner for his
Okay.
suggestion that we move further away from my short walk.
Oh, you got a short walk to City Hall?
Okay, so
I got a short walk to here.
everyone's accommodated. Samantha, find a public building close to you.
That's right, that's usually age thing,
Brad, so
man.
City Hall is good for me.
All right, let's move on. Public comment for items not on the agenda. Pass. Yeah, okay. All right. This is where I think we can talk about the two documents that were in the packet that the attorney, he had seen the timeline. We had asked him if he could start working on them. And he did. That's what he did. He started working on them, and he gave us the information that we were looking for. Would you like to discuss that since you requested it?
Madam Chair, I was going to suggest we add that to the agenda at the next meeting,
Okay.
since it's actually already in there for the next meeting on this timeline. And I'd like for the attorney to be present so that we can ask him questions and deliberate on the points that he sent along. So my suggestion is we add it to the agenda for the next meeting
And request the attorney to be present.
and request the attorney to be present. He's also, all of you probably noticed, he has started making revisions, actual suggested revisions, and if you read those like I did, I'm ready to ask him questions and start deliberating the easier ones. So we can, as we discussed a couple meetings ago, so we can start approving some changes that everyone would agree to, and we can go into the end of the year looking our public in the eye and saying, it's happening. We're doing what you sent us here to do.
Okay, so that takes us to, that's what we'll throw on the next, we'll add to the next agenda items. Next meeting, are we all in agreement for November 22nd?
Madam Chairperson, do you contact the attorney? Not the city clerk, correct? You're the one who contacts the attorney?
I can contact.
I just wanted to make sure, because the clerk's not here, and I don't want your request to just fall flat, and I know in the past, I think you have. I just wanted to make sure, I think it's appropriate for you to do that. That's why you're the chairperson of this.
I have done in the past, and I don't mind doing it.
No, I think it's most appropriate for you to do it. Good.
Okay. Any other agendas for the next meeting? Agenda items? No? Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you for coming, everybody.